Welcome to Taking Care of Business on News Talk 1180 KERN for the best in Saturday Talk Radio at 1 o'clock and on 1230 KGEO at 10 o'clock Saturday, and for the best in Wednesday Talk Radio on 1410 KERI, the Christian station. We are now on 1000 KKIM in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and also 3 times a week on the internet nationwide through knookmedia.com. Plus, you can catch any or all of our shows for the last 4 years on YouTube at Clay and Marty Show. My partner is Clay Koerner, and I'm Marty Pay. Our producer is Greg Held, but today, subbing is the Goose. The Goose is on the loose in the studio. We had a great show last week with Colonel Maness, who's running for Senate in Louisiana. What do you think of Colonel Maness? I liked him a lot.
He's got a tough race ahead of him.
Yeah, he does, against Mary Landrieu. But, I hope and pray he gets it. We need more people like him in office.
The longer Obama talks, the better chance he has.
This is true. Our second guest is author-commentator Andrew Klavan, and I just finished his latest book, Mind Wars. I highly recommend his stuff. It'll twist your brain a little bit. For those of you that like books that have been converted to movies, you may remember him from True Crime, starring Clint Eastwood. That's one of Andrew's books.
White Christian Men.
Yes, that's his commentary.
He got really raked over the coals for that one, didn't he?
And he didn't say anything that was wrong. But today we've got another fantastic show. In the second half, we have Mary Lee Schreider from the Right to Life League here in Kern County. But I want to tell you a little story before I introduce our first guest. Years ago, when I lived in Los Angeles, I was the vice chairman of the Southern California Constitution Education Committee, which was a offshoot of the bicentennial celebration. My old friend Jerry Nordskog was the chairman. And one of the people we always refer to was a gentleman, a wise gentleman, who is our next guest, Dr. J. Grimstead, who wrote a great new book called Rebuilding Civilization on the Bible. Dr. Grimstead, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You know, I'm tempted to call you Dr. J, but that might confuse our listeners.
Well, I used to play a little basketball. That's true.
Well, let's see. Now, you're getting up there. You're almost Clay's age. So when you and Clay played, did they use a peach bowl, where they had to, peach basket, where they had to kick
That's what we used, yes.
Do you remember those days, Clay?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
we probably played against each other. Don't worry, Doctor. He gets 1 or 2 shots in a show, but it doesn't last.
Jay, you got to enjoy the ride.
Let's talk about the book. This is on the Bible.
It's a fascinating book here. Rebuilding Civilization on the Bible. What's the premise to this book, Jay?
Well, the premise is that God spoke inerrantly, accurately, historically accurate in the Bible, and that in the Bible are all of the principles mankind of any country needs in order to operate their society with justice, with kindness, and to be prosperous and to make things work right, because God had the wisdom to give mankind in the Bible the information they need for how society works best.
And why do you think we've gotten away from that?
Well, because I'd say the Christian church, starting around 1830, started moving away from a God-centered religion, God-centered Christianity, focusing on God's greatness and His truth and all, and towards a man-centered, where it was almost all about my salvation and my joy, and I'm so happy, and here's the reason why Jesus took my burdens all away, which is good stuff. It's just that it was the wrong focus. And then also we got into a focus on the rapture, which again is important, but it's not the most important thing. And so what happened from around 1830 on, the Bible-believing churches in America started quit being the salt and light they should have been, and focused within the 4 walls of their church on teaching about the rapture and leaving things like law, government, economics, education, media, science, and the arts to the pagans, to the non-Christians, And we bailed out of society, essentially, and were happily singing our hymns in the church and thinking everything was cool.
You know, it's interesting, Jay. I've been skimming your book. I haven't had a chance to really read it yet. I can't wait to get into it. But it reminds me a little bit of Colson's book, Kingdoms in Conflict. And I remember the way he put it. He said, you know, the role of the church is to hold the state to moral accountability. And we obviously haven't done that. We've left that void, and secular humanists are more than happy to fill that void in.
Exactly. We left the playing field, actually, and the other side, with just their 11 players on the field, have been able to make tremendous headway the last 100-some years.
Now, Clay, the reference to 11 people on the field is not basketball, that's football. I thought I should clear that.
Thanks for the reference.
Our guest by phone is Dr. Jay Grimstead, author of a great new book, Rebuilding Civilization on the Bible.
You know, Doctor, there's one thing that always attracts me to books, and that's it has pictures, and this book doesn't have any pictures.
We're sorry, Clay.
It's got a picture of the other author and then a picture of a very funny-looking old man with my name under it. It's got two pictures.
Actually, there is a lot of pictures in the back of various people, which is interesting.
Well, now, one of the things that I learned that I didn't realize going through this was one of your mentors, or your mentor, was Dr. Francis Schaeffer.
That's right. That's right.
Can you explain why and who Dr. Schaeffer was for our listeners who may not know?
He was probably, I would say, the greatest Christian philosopher of the last half of the 20th century, and I put him right at the level there with Dr. R.J. Rushdoony. He got Christians thinking intellectually and philosophically and historically like we had not been thinking before his book started coming out in 1968. And I realized something was terribly wrong with the thinking of evangelical Christianity and was going to write a book explaining it. And all of a sudden I discovered his book, and here was most of what I wanted to say already said 10 times better in his book, his first book, Escape from Reason. So he became an instant hero. I went out and bought 30 of his books and passed them out, and eventually met him, and then he encouraged me as I started the ICBI, International Council on Biblical Inerrancy, which defended the inerrancy of the Bible with a whole army of theologians. He encouraged me in that, and he was part of that and was on our executive committee.
You know, it's interesting. I'm looking at the Appendix B in the back, and one of our recent guests was Ted Baer, and I see he's on your executive board. And then I'm going through some of your other committees, and it looks like we've had 2 or 3 additional people that endorsed your book that have been on our show. That's pretty interesting.
Good. You guys must be good guys.
Well, one of us is.
Yeah, and you get to guess. Why do you feel that... I notice here that you're optimistic about Christians as far as seeing the error of their ways and changing. Do you think that realistically can happen?
Yes, I believe the church today, the Bible-believing church I'm talking about in America now, is very weak, superficial, marginalized, and a lot of problems, plus some downright disobedience to the Bible. But basically, wherever any Christians rise up, as history proves, and love God enough to give their lives for the truth, to be willing to die for the truth if necessary, God steps in if they ask Him, and there's a revival. So we really believe it's possible. And the last 15 years, there's been a number of reasons to believe that sections of the church are waking up where we could have a genuine revival, reformation. And the facts are, in America, we're way behind on where the Spirit's moving in other areas of the world, like Asia and Africa and South America, Central America, India, China. God is working amazingly well, like the book of Acts, and powerful things are happening. We're just kind of behind and Laodicean in America, but the rest of the world, except for Europe and America, are really waking up and moving forward, and I think God is about to do a very marvelous thing within the Christian church.
You know, I read a story just the other day about a God event, supposedly. There was a missile fired out of Gaza. It was headed towards Israel and the cabinet where they were having a meeting, and the first two missiles that tried to stop it missed. And so it was only 4 seconds from hitting the cabinet when all of a sudden a great wind came up and pushed that missile into the ocean. Now,
that sounds like an amazing coincidence to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's on the internet. You can pick it up there, but I thought that was really interesting. You talk about a God thing.
Praise God. Praise God.
Now,
yes.
One of the things in your book, and when we come back from the break, I'd like to talk about this, is you have 24 topics and theological documents.
Yes.
And that was fascinating. I mean, just looking at these documents and the biblical perspective on these different issues that we have going on today. When we come back to break, let's talk a little bit about that.
Great.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.